Our second speaker today is Arek Dreyer, presenting Essential Admin Workflows for Apple Silicon. Welcome, Arek.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We sure can.
All right, well, I just locked my screen. I'll unlock it. It's really good to be here. I really want to thank the PSU MacAdmins conference for inviting me, and all the people who work so hard to make this happen. This is my first time at PSU MacAdmins, and I can't wait to do it again in person. I want to see all of your faces, want to join you in person, and just really looking forward to that. But in the meantime, I'm not here to talk about PSU MacAdmins. I'm talking about Apple Silicon, Mac computers with Apple Silicon. So just really quickly want to get into why it's so different for a Mac with Apple Silicon, and then just get into the workflows. If we've got time, we can really dig into some more details. So first of all, why is it so different? Because of security. That's basically it. So if you look at the Apple Security Platform or Apple Platform Security Guide, you'll see lots of details like, here's the boot process for a Mac with Apple Silicon. And the goal is to make sure that every step along the way, your device, your Apple device, whether it's a Mac, an iPhone, an iPad, an Apple TV, that every step of the way from loading ROM from the time that you power on to loading the OS, there's progressive checks to make sure that nothing has been tampered with, that the software hasn't been tampered with, the hardware hasn't been tampered with, and a lot of the material that's in here about Apple Silicon wasn't necessarily available when we were trying to finish up the macOS Support Essentials text and book. So we had to leave a lot of that last chapter on the startup and shutdown sequences. Kind of had to leave that as like, hey, see Apple's documentation. So it's available now in Apple's Apple Platform Security Guide. And I'm not going to get too far into the weeds, but I just want to cover a little bit of the differences that this Apple Platform Security Guide covers. Like for macOS, the regular boot mode, just running macOS, is you turn on the Mac. And over in the description, 6 steps from the time that you power on to the time that everything gets loaded. But for Recovery OS, scroll down a little bit, from a shutdown state, press and hold the power button. This ensures that physical act of changing, of holding down the power button helps to ensure that no malicious processes are involved to take a running Mac and change its boot mode without the user intervention. So for us as MacAdmins, that's kind of a hassle because we want to be able to automate all of the things. We want to be able to say, oh, for this lab, I just want to reboot all of these Mac computers into macOS Recovery so I can do something. The reality is that because of the heightened security posture, if you want to take a lab full of Mac computers and boot them into macOS Recovery, you're going to have to physically touch each of those Mac computers and hold down the power button. Over in the right column here, we have details that this is the same process as Recovery OS boot, except that it boots to a second copy. So this is the fallback Recovery OS. Again, I'm not going to get into all the details. I'd love to break all these down, all these different modes, and all the security ramifications. But I'm guessing you're more interested in what are the actual buttons that I need to press. So I'm going to get to that, but I do want to caution you, and this is something that is not unique to Apple Silicon, but just for testing macOS in general. There's a workflow out there that is really, really clever. That is to make an APFS TMUtil local snapshot during the initial setup assistant, so that you can capture a pristine state of the Mac, or as pristine as possible, and do your tests of automated device enrollment or setup assistant or whatever it is, and then restore to that TMUtil local APFS snapshot. The problem with doing that is that you'll be left with a user that doesn't have secure token. There'll be metadata about a user that has secure token, but because you've restored and wiped out that user that you created during setup assistant, that user won't exist anymore. And you basically, if you open up system preferences, go to security and privacy, go to the file vault tab, you'll see a big turn file vault on button, and you'll click it and nothing will happen. And that's because you don't have any users that has secure token. So no one can turn on file vault. There's also some other things you can do. You can't do, like, you won't be able to change the security posture of macOS. You won't be able to install macOS on a second volume, at least with Apple Silicon. The good news on that front is for rapid testing, erase all contents and settings is on its way. During WWDC, Apple made the wonderful announcement that erase all contents and settings will be available with macOS Monterey. And I would, 11.5 isn't out yet. So I can't comment on the functionality of 11.5, but 11.5, wow, it would be amazing if you could effectively issue an erase all content and settings command to a Mac. Just super, that would be super awesome, because you could test your ADE workflows, you could test turning on file vault, and then basically wipe that Mac, get it back to a fresh out of the box scenario. But that's not here today. So when testing, don't rely on that TMUtil workflow. Not to get too far into the weeds again, but part of the Apple Platform Security Guide goes into the sealed key protection. Information in this diagram is really useful. It gives a lot of insight into how the user password is entangled with hardware characteristics in a way that lets you protect the device. So that if you, like for a Mac with a T2 or a Mac with Apple Silicon, even if you were to take the storage, the internal storage out of the device and put it into a different device, if file vault is on, there's just no getting into that device without the original the original hardware that you turned file vault on with. So the untold story there is make sure you've got good backups of any of your devices with that Intel-based Mac with the Apple T2 chip or a Mac with Apple Silicon. So that's as far as I'm going to go with the Apple Platform Security Guide. It's really full of really good information. But I'm gonna jump to some workflows with Apple Silicon. So kind of the first one is to open startup options. And I'm missing a word on the side, open startup options. So let me just go right to my Mac with Apple Silicon, and I'm going to, well, first of all, let's switch back to, this is my video of the HDMI out. I've got a little USB capture card. So I'm gonna turn the Mac on and hold the power key. So let me go back. I'm gonna turn the Mac on, hold the power key. Hopefully I got the timing right. Nope, I didn't. I saw the Apple menu flash, so I'm gonna unplug it. Plug it back in. Press the power and hold it. Continue holding for startup options. Loading startup options, so now I can let go of the power button. See my options, gear appear, and I can choose either to boot off of that Macintosh HD, or I can choose startup options. Let me go back to my camera here real quick, and I'm going to plug in a keyboard so that I can actually, I'm going to switch back to my video of the screen of my Mac Mini. I can use the keyboard to go back and forth. I'm using the arrow keys. If I hold the shift, I can boot in safe mode. Booting in safe mode is an old MacAdmin trick to kind of cut down on the amount of things that get loaded as part of startup. It's very well documented from Apple and in our macOS Support Essentials 11 book. One thing that's of particular interest with a Mac with Apple Silicon is that if you continue in safe mode, then we don't load any extra kernel extensions. And Apple has said for a long time to developers, hey, using kernel extensions is not the way to go. Use system extensions instead, because system extensions will load when an app that uses system extensions loads, and will unload when you uninstall that app. And those system extensions run in user space instead of kernel space. Just lots of reasons why kernel extensions are dangerous. It's really, they're written in C or C++. They're hard to debug. They are hard to write. But still, a lot of developers said, hey, the system extensions that Apple offered us don't really do what we need yet. They don't have the functionality, so we're still relying on kernel extensions. So with the Mac with Apple Silicon, if you do want to use kernel extensions, you can facilitate that by whitelisting that with a configuration profile with an MDM. An MDM solution, kind of like Kanji, which is the MDM solution that I went to go work for starting March 1st, and we're hiring. So if anytime you load a kernel extension, though, you have to restart, because as is highlighted in the platform security guide, kernel extensions aren't loaded until the boot process can confirm that nothing's been modified with that kernel extension, that it's approved. So the upshot is, if you want to use a kernel extension, the user's going to have to reboot. One other option back here in this Mac Mini is to always use this particular operating system. With a Mac with Apple Silicon, it's really easy to install multiple versions of macOS so that you can test out various versions. So this is kind of a shortcut to opening up startup disk and changing what disk you're using to start up from. So we've got Shift to continue in safe mode, Command to Option to always use. The other one that's in here is Command D to start up macOS Diagnostics. So I'm going to press it really quick, and you see continue holding to start diagnostics. I don't want to start the diagnostics. There's nothing wrong with this hardware, so I'm just going to use the right arrow here, go to Options, and hit the return key to continue. So here in, I need to go grab a mouse. I was cleaning up my desk and I don't have a mouse handy. Let me go grab that. All right, here's the mouse. Choose my language. macOS Recovery is starting, and look at all these things that I can do in macOS Recovery. Just go up to the Apple menu here. I can choose my startup disk, restart and shut down. Go to the recovery menu. That's not very interesting, but I will show you one place where it is really interesting. Under utilities, I can open startup security utility terminal and share disk. We'll talk about the three of these really quick. Well, actually, I'll come back to these. Well, let's start with startup security utility. One thing that's really different between a Mac with Apple Silicon and an Intel-based Mac is that the startup security utility will give you the ability on a Mac with Apple Silicon to set the security policy for each different version of macOS that you're running. For an Intel, it's the settings are for any OS on the Mac, so it's more like a security policy for the entire Mac. Let's see if I can set my security policy. The mouse is a little bit slower, a little bit hard to. Come on, mouse. Got a mouse pad too. All right, so two security policies that I can use is full security or reduced security, which is what you'd want to use if you want to use other versions of macOS and do some testing. There's one more in here that's not even available until you turn off SIP, and not recommended at all. It's for people who are developers. So I'm gonna cancel that. I'm gonna recommend that you always use full security. And I'm gonna Command Q to quit startup security utility. Go back up to my utilities menu. And open, I'm not going to open terminal, but just want, well, I will open terminal. Terminal is one place where you can test networking issues. Maybe you're trying to figure out why a Mac isn't enrolling and you've got some network filtering on, and the security team assures you that they're not doing any filtering, they're not blocking any ports, or they've opened all the ports you've asked them to. And so you've you can open terminal and do some basic troubleshooting. One of the things that you can do, additionally to using some of the tools, the networking tools like NC or ping, is reset password. So this reset password failed because this is a Mac that has not yet been set up. There's no users on this Mac. So I can't do anything. But for early versions of macOS 11, people got into a weird state. And things were weird with macOS 11, 11.0, 11.0.1. There's lots of text out there about how weird things got, and one of the workflows was to just erase the Mac and kind of start over. And one way to do that without having to use Apple Configurator and the charging cable to connect two Macs together is to go up to Recovery System menu and choose Erase Mac. So this is kind of a escape hatch. If you're unable to lock the Mac, things are going wrong, you don't know how to kind of start over, you can erase the Mac. I'm not going to do that yet. Let's see if I can quit that. Nope, yep, I could. Excellent. And I'm going to quit terminal as well. And lastly, go to utilities and talk about share disk. Back in the good old days, we would use target disk mode for all sorts of things. Target disk mode was a way of putting your internal disk, making your internal disk available to anyone in the world well, not anyone in the world, making it available to mount on another Mac, kind of changing your Mac into a very expensive USB enclosure or FireWire enclosure for that internal disk. We'd use it for running disk utility on it. We'd use it for copying files off of a Mac that's in target disk mode to another Mac. Well, not so much reinstalling the OS. Also, wasn't going to go here, but Apple Software Restore. We used ASR to do a block copy of a Mac, an image of a Mac that has been configured the way we want it, or from using a tool from Par Olufsen like Auto Damage, that spelled Auto AUTODMG. We could create a disk image of a never been booted Mac so that you could rapidly restore a Mac to a never been booted state. The problem with that turned out to be that firmware updates were only installed through the installer. So if you were using ASR block copy restores, you might be in a weird state where you missed out on firmware updates. And you could do it as long as you were careful and made sure that you always use the installer to update to the latest version of macOS. Then you could wipe and restore that same version. But now with a Mac with Apple Silicon, all that's to say that holding down the T key to start target disk mode is no longer available. That is just gone. Instead, we have this option, share disk. When you choose share disk, that allows SMB file sharing. So you'd connect a USB or Thunderbolt cable to another Mac and go into your Finder, go into Network, and find that host and copy the files that you needed off of it. If File Vault is turned on, you'd need to authenticate first. So it's kind of a cool thing. I haven't I mean, I've used it for testing and documenting, but I've never found a reason yet to use shared disk. So let me come back to the main 4 utilities that are available in macOS Recovery. Restoring from Time Machine. Didn't really write much about that in macOS Support Essentials because it didn't really work. But this is the method that you could use to do that TM, to restore from a TMUtil local snapshot that I'm telling you not to do if you want to turn File Vault on. So you'd click continue. If you had a Time Machine snapshot, it would appear, you would see your local internal disk, you click your internal disk, and then you'd select your Time Machine snapshot. But like I said, not a good idea to do that. Reinstalling macOS Big Sur here is, want to be clear that this doesn't wipe your existing disk. This just reinstalls macOS on your internal storage. I guess this would be a good time to mention that macOS Recovery over the internet is not available with an Apple, a Mac with Apple Silicon. There is a hidden recovery partition. There's even a hidden second, a fallback recovery partition that hopefully you'll be able to use in the case if you need to reinstall. You can also use the support article that talks about how to use create install media and create a USB installer. So and there's some other ways to reinstall as well. Safari is available to browse and get help for your Mac. And finally, Disk Utility. I'm going to open Disk Utility real quick. By default, Disk Utility shows you the volumes. If you want to see the actual devices, you click that little down arrow and choose Show All Devices. So now I see here's my actual disk, the APFS container, and notice that previously the APFS system volume, which is read-only, is typically named Macintosh HD. Previously, that user data, which is APFS read-write, was called Macintosh HD-data. That is now just called data. So if you want to create, maybe you want to install another version of macOS, I'd recommend that you pick the disk itself, go up to Partition. I apologize about my mouse. I don't know why it's so. Let me try a different mouse pad. I had one right here. Don't know where it is right now. Select the disk, click plus. Are you sure? Because most normal people will want to add a volume so it can share. No, I'm not normal. I am a MacAdmin. I want to add a partition. Let's call this beta, and let's leave APFS as that volume. All right, so I'm going to switch back to my camera while I let Disk Utility finish up. Move this out of the way, my camera, my keyboard, and take my MacBook Air with Apple Silicon out of the box. And want to transition to talking about Apple Configurator. So this is a Mac that's out of the box, it's ready to go. but maybe I want to use configurator to wipe it. Let's pretend that it's not fresh here out of the box. So I'm going to turn it off, and I'm going to show you the keystrokes that the Apple support article says to use. Now, Tim Perfett, my first trainer mentor from back in 2001, when I became an Apple certified trainer, he's got a really, he's got I think the best workflow for accessing DFU mode for a Mac with Apple Silicon. But I'll show you the method that Apple says to use. So the Apple support article says to use the Apple charging cable. Now you can use a Thunderbolt cable, but you'll just see an error on your Apple configurator. It's not a big deal. So you can get away with it. But if you don't want to see that error, then recommend that you use the charging cable that came with your Mac. The support article has really great diagrams that explain exactly what ports you need to use if you're going to use Apple Configurator 2 with a Mac with Apple Silicon. In this case, for the MacBook Air, it is the port on the left side of the Mac closest to the back of the Mac. So I'm going to connect that to my Mac that's running Apple Configurator. That turned it on, so I'm going to turn it off. Okay, now that it's off, I'm going to give it a couple seconds, and I'm going to use the keyboard sequence, which is Control Option Right Shift Power for 10 seconds, and then let go of the keys, but hold down the power button. So let's see how this works. So getting ready, Control Option Shift Power. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I'm going to let go, but keep power. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And on my Apple configurator, I'm going to let go. My Apple configurator is loading. Sorry, I didn't have it open. Take a quick screenshot here and drop it in. So this is what Apple Configurator looks like. I've got my phone connected, and I also see this MacBook Air that is in DFU mode. So from Apple Configurator, I can restore it, I can wipe it, I can revive it. Revive is a funny Revive is a funny workflow. It's really only for that corner case of a corner case where you're updating the firmware, or you're updating the firmware and there's been a power loss, or there's been some reason why the firmware can't be updated. Reviving may preserve user data. So if you're in that weird corner case, you're doing some really weird things, that revive might save you. The workflow that I use all the time, though, is to restore. Restore will download the IPSW file from Apple and restore, wipe out the entire disk, wipe out the storage, and restore it to a state where everything is back to its out-of-the-box situation. One thing that is problematic for putting your Mac in DFU mode and using it with Apple Configurator is that you see here, there's no indication on the Mac that it's on or that it's in DFU mode. There was no sound, there was no visual indicator. So that's just something that I'd like you to be aware of and be prepared for. So if something, if you're trying to do this, just make sure that you look at Apple Configurator and not the Mac that you're trying to restore, because there's really no indicator on the Mac that you're trying to restore that anything's going on. There's a really good website, ipsw.me, which facilitates downloading IPSW files from Apple. They aggregate the links, the direct links. So if you're feeling weird about clicking a link from some weird website that you don't know who runs, especially when you're downloading an IPSW file, you can grab the actual link, paste that into a browser, see that it's from Apple, and I use that to. I've got a collection of IPSW files. I've got 11.01, 11.1, 11.2, 11.3, so that I can test updating macOS 11. So I'm going to switch back to now that my disk utility is done, I'm going to switch back to my Mac Mini video. Disconnect my MacBook Air, bring my Mac Mini back. Successfully applied changes. I've got 2 different volumes. I'm going to quit disk utility. And I'm going to try to install the beta. So to do that, I'm going to power off, hold the power key, or press the power button and hold it. Insert a, let's switch back to, got a little flash disk with the installer. Plug that in. So I've got my mouse and my keyboard. Power and hold. Switch back to QuickTime. Continue holding for startup options. Actually, I don't want to install the beta because it's beta. I shouldn't be showing that. Let's switch over. I've got a different installer. This is an installer with 10.5 and macOS 11. Of course, this is a Mac with Apple Silicon that can run only 10.11 and greater. So you don't see the install macOS Catalina installer. Select my language. Well, I'll leave off Wi-Fi to show what happens if I'm not connected to an internet connection. All right, we're not going to sit here for 59 minutes, but I will switch back to my camera here. All right, so here's my MacBook Air. It was in DFU mode. I'm going to connect it back up again. See where we're at in Apple Configurator 2. Yeah, it is still in DFU mode. It survived being unplugged and plugged back in again. And let's see if I can switch. Let's see if I can. I'm moving my mouse from my Mac with Apple Silicon and thinking it's somewhere else. So let's see if I can I can share my screen. Open share key, and all right, Microsoft Teams. Show me what you got. I'm sorry, I'm trying to. Oh, okay, great. Here is. All right. I am trying to show my Apple Configurator 2. And that's not. Let's see if I switch. Am I sharing my configurator? I can't see what I'm doing. Sorry.
It looks like we are seeing the Big Sur installer right now.
Okay.
Here's configurator. Let me see if we can get that. There we go. Now we see configurator.
All right. Excellent. So MacBook Air is in DFU mode. If I right click or control click, I can choose restore, which will go and download the IPSW. I can choose update, prayer, all the usual things. From advanced is revive device. Also interesting, erase all content and settings. That is usually associated with a iOS or iPadOS device. But I have a folder of files that I have, of IPSW files that I have. And I'm just going to drag. I am having Finder not do what I need it to do. There's a delivery truck delivering something. The dog is barking. All right, well, my IPSW files are not handy, so I'm going to just do the restore right here. Do you want to restore and update to the latest firmware version? All of your media and other data will be erased from the primary disk. What's important to note here is that this will erase any volumes. So, on that Mac Mini, I created that second volume where I'm installing Big Sur on that secondary volume. With this workflow, with putting it in DFU mode, the entire internal storage is gone. All right, so I already downloaded, the IPSW from Apple. So it says here it's downloading the system. I don't believe it unless 11.5 came out since the last time I did this morning. And then it will install the software on the Mac, and the Mac will restart. So those are the basics that I wanted to show you. I wanted to show you the Apple Security Platform. Wanted to show you all the different options you can do in when you open startup options. A couple other things I wanted to mention, if we had time, we do have time, is there are some other workflows that aren't necessarily supported or out of the box. One is using Mac Deploy Stick, now named NDS, from Two Canoes software. There is a special workflow for Mac computers with Apple Silicon. And the other and you can use that to update, reinstall, run lots of different workloads. It's very, very versatile. Combine that with an Arduino to inject USB keystrokes to the device. Mac Provisioner is a tool that is available through Apple Professional Services. I would talk to your Apple Professional Services rep about getting access to Mac Provisioner and testing it out. A couple other bits and bobs here is that currently it seems like there is an issue with having File Vault on and a custom policy banner, that if you are using both of those features, your users might experience some kind of a lockout after the Mac has restarted. There's no EFI firmware password, and a lot of MacAdmins have complained. Well, let's put it more positively. A lot of MacAdmins have shared their feedback with Apple about that. And if you look in the Appleseed-private channel of MacAdmins Slack, you'll see some information about how some features that address that address the desire for organizations to be able to lock out a user from getting access to MacOS Recovery. Wish I could say more. Wish that was available, not in a beta. Speaking of that, the Appleseed-private channel, if you are interested in joining that channel, see the header of the Appleseed channel on MacAdmins. Back up with MacAdmins Slack. To join the MacAdmins Slack, you would go to macadmins.org, agree to the terms of engagement, the community guidelines. Take a look in the Appleseed channel, and basically it's, if you have Appleseed for IT, that will prove that you have access to the betas, and we've got a way of sharing information with a little less restraint. Still, Apple's terms and conditions for betas is that you're not to discuss betas outside of Apple forums. So, Rich Troughton has done a fantastic job of sharing his WWDC notes within the umbrella of the Apple discussions. So thank you, Rich, for doing that and organizing that and sharing that. So back to firmware password. There's no firmware password for a Mac with Apple Silicon, but there is there's a bright future ahead to address that. Again, the goal with the changes to the startup sequences and accessing macOS Recovery and the lack of macOS Recovery over internet is it all comes back to security. I encourage you to explore that Apple security guide, Apple Platform Security Guide, and it takes several reads to kind of put all the pieces together, because there's so many terms that they use that don't really mean anything to you on the first read, and until you can get a mental map of what each term means. There's a glossary. The glossary really helps. It's really difficult. So Apple Configurator 2 is just, I guess, is downloading a system. I'm going to stop sharing that and open it up for questions.
All right. Thank you very much, Eric. That was a fantastic presentation. I really enjoyed it and learned a few new things myself, so quite excited for that. First question we had actually was what the sticker on the back of your MacBook was.
That is BMO. BMO is a character from Adventure Time, which is now available on the HBO platforms. My wife and I watched a lot of Adventure Time throughout the pandemic, and I used the BMO sticker in the Liftoff launch video that I did a couple months ago. Was it a couple months ago now? In that video for Kanji, I demonstrated using Liftoff, and I had two Mac computers. One was the admin computer, and one was the user persona computer. And just to drive home that it was the user persona computer, I personalized it with a sticker of BMO.
Very clever. Very clever. Okay. Next one. To confirm, you need to switch to reduced security if you want to allow text. Correct? Even if full security is recommended?
Yeah, that is, well, so if your Mac is enrolled through automated device enrollment, then you don't need to reduce security. So let's stick with automated device enrollment.
Gotcha. Okay, great. Can you use DFU mode to do a mil-spec secure erase of the SSD? Which I'm not sure what military specification secure erase. I'm not sure. Is that a 7-pass or 5-pass erase on the SSD? Can you use DFU mode to accomplish that?
I don't believe so. So let me get into the weeds on that really quick. So when you have File Vault turned on, the information is encrypted, and the key to decrypt that information, part of how that key is built, there's some information, there's some key that is stored in what's called effaceable storage, and that's available only to the secure enclave. And when you wipe the device, either with DFU mode or with an MDM command to wipe the device, that throws away the key that's stored in effaceable memory, so that the remaining bits that are on that internal flash storage it's just encrypted mess. I think the mil-spec requires rewriting ones and zeros multiple times over the disk, and for flash memory, that's a recipe for destroying it and making it not useful in the future.
Sure. Yeah. Looks like has quit on you there. We lost your video feed.
Yeah.
But no problem.
You just turn my video off.
No problem. That was the oops, sorry, I just accidentally muted myself. That was the end of the questions we had. Eric, I just would really appreciate your time. Thank you again for delivering today's second session for us, MacAdmins conference.
One last thing.
Yes.
If you are using Apple Configurator 2 for testing Monterey, make sure that your Apple Configurator 2 is up to date, and also go and download the latest beta Xcode and install and then open the Xcode so that it installs additional components so that you can restore correctly. And that's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much again. Really appreciate the information.
Thank you so much. Really glad to be here, and really appreciate. So I appreciate the PSU staff, but even more, we all, speaking on behalf of PSU, in the conference. We really appreciate everyone who's come to these and participated and asked questions and invested your time with us. We really appreciate it. It's all for your users, and they don't know how lucky they are to have you.
Fantastically said. I don't think I could say that any better. And with that, we'll wrap up today's Campfire Sessions.